Welcome to the Talented Investors That Share podcast.
You're really going with that? That's the name? Have you figured out what it spells?
All right, welcome to the Talented Investors That Share podcast. I'm Adam New, as always, chatting with you today. My good friend, Connor Townsend, you are, without a doubt, someone that handles a million projects at once, has to deal with me, and has the luxury of being able to work with Amanda as well. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
I think you're forced to. Let's just be real about this. You have no choice. This is now a part of your job description, is occasionally be stand-in on podcast.
Yeah, you can't see the guns that are pointed at me right now. Yeah.
All right, so here's really why we want to have Connor out here today. Essentially, every project that we do, this is the guy that's running in it. And if I'm correct, Connor, there were as many as, what was the peak? Were we doing 11 at one time? Were we flipping 11 houses at one time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different stages, but
I was not all at the same place, but yeah. So at one point we had 11 houses. Now there are going to be somebody out there that goes, "Oh, I do 40 at the same time. That's not a big deal." I don't know about you, but for me that felt like a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. So we learned a whole bunch in that process, and so I think there's a ton of value that Connor can bring here to the table today, and also bring value in the sense of, for those that are building a business or scaling a business, what it's like to be working with employees, what it's like working for an owner. Like, there's a lot of dynamics here and what those roles look like, everything from what he started off as to what he's doing now. So I think there's a lot that we can work with here. And I'm really happy that you're here to be able to talk to folks, because there's somebody out there that's right now going, how am I supposed to hire anybody, work with anybody? And so we'll just give them the keys to the kingdom here, okay? So we'll keep it light and easy for you. Let's just start off with, how the heck did we get to where we're sitting here right now? Where did this whole thing start?
I think for me, it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's like the classic thing that kicks off a lot of people. So I listened to that book on Audible as I was painting apartments. And I started thinking to myself, maybe I shouldn't be painting apartments. Maybe I should be doing something else. And so I started attending real estate investor networking meetups in the Richmond area. Went to a lot of them. Some of them I liked, some of them I didn't. But at one of them, you and Amanda were the guest speaker. Mm-hmm. And I think that ended up like kicking off our relationship, getting to know each other. Because after that, I approached you guys and I was like, "Guys, you're my hero. That's awesome. Like, tell me all about it." And I was asking all of these questions, and you were giving me like really frustratingly simple answers. Mm-hmm. So I think you told me to go, read a book or two and do this or that. And then about a month or two later, we saw each other at another one of those meetups. And I was like, "Hey, like, I did all those things."
Which was a first, by the way. Like, that, I don't think I've met anybody that's actually done that. So,
well, and that's one of those lessons that I've really learned as I've gotten to know you guys and other real estate investors. Mm-hmm. The thing that separates people who like to listen to YouTube videos or listen to Rich Dad, Poor Dad audiobooks, and the people who actually are investing, is taking action. Right. So I think early on you gave me one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten, which was focus on just-in-time learning rather than just-in-case learning. And I'm one of those people who just like wants to know everything about everything. And that really gave me like the focus of like, okay, just think about what your next step is. Put like all of your weight behind that. And then once you hit that, you'll have another step, and you just iterate and repeat that process. And that's a lot of what brought me to where I am today. So thanks for that advice.
Yeah.
And following it is what kind of led me here.
Yeah. So, and I'll be the first to say, like, we're not famous by any means. We're getting there, but like, we're not famous by any means. Barely Richmond famous, or at least known by people that do appreciable business in Richmond, right? So I don't think we're a household name by any stretch. And so from time to time, get asked or force our way into speaking at a local real estate investor events just because we want to be known, right? We want people to know, like, oh, I've got something I'm working on. Maybe I'll take it to Adam and Amanda, or oh, that's something that they might be able to answer my question, or just working with us, partner with us. Like there's always something to do together. I think that one was Chesterfield RIA, or what might now be the Greater Richmond RIA, or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The one in that community center.
Yeah. And so you were 15 at the time. No.
No.
No, you were.
Man,
So this was how many? So how long ago was this?
So that's got to be 3 years ago.
Okay. So you would have been
or less.
22, 23? 23?
Yeah.
We'll say 23. Okay.
Because I'd recently gotten married, and like that's all of this kind of happened around that same time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like whenever somebody asks me about the timeline of things, like I always have to, subtract my anniversary, and then I'm like at the beginning of the journey. And so met you guys there, and then we kind of like saw each other at a bunch of these different events, chatted at them, and then at one of them, probably about a year and a half ago, maybe a year and a half and some change, Amanda was like, yeah, we're looking for a lead manager, somebody to answer the phones, because she was tired of doing it. And I thought to myself, well, I'd be interested in that. So I told her, hey, like, let me know what that entails. And sure enough, it was something that worked out with my other job painting apartments. I could always put the paintbrush down and answer a call when it came in. So there's a number of great deals that have come through your pipeline that started with me answering a call and getting like paint on my phone case or something like that. So that's like, those things that's like, there will be signs.
Yeah.
So personally, I have a phone case that I have kept and I don't need to replace because it doesn't have any paint on it. Like, that's a little win for me. I know I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
Started lead managing for you guys. That took a little bit of time to get up to speed with, feeling comfortable talking to people, getting cursed out on the phone. But now that I'd like felt comfortable with that, really got into the swing of it. And then the more time we ended up spending like with each other and working with you guys, the more I think both of us realized there was a really obvious synergy that could happen where you and Amanda were gunslingers, like shoot first, ask questions later. And I was always more of a like systems and processes guy. And, how can we make this more efficient or make it run smoother? And so I think that was the thing that kicked off the next part of things where you hired me on full time and I started managing some projects for you in addition to the lead managing, and then really started refining a few of those processes.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's cool in the fact that you were like, I don't really have a deal. I don't know what I'm doing, but like, I want to do this. It looks like y'all are doing fairly well. So like, I'd like to participate this in some capacity. So if there's a role or if there's something that I can participate in, let us know. And we were like, yeah, I think we got something here. And honestly, at the same time, that was a stage in our business where it's like, we weren't really the size that we are now. So whether you realized it or not, you were taking just as much of a risk on us as we were on you, because there was nothing that said we were going to stick around or quadruple in size over the next 24 months. I guess part of that is because of you. So that was a risk on your part. Whether did you even know that at the time, or are you just like, these people seem like they're loaded and they've got a bunch of deals going on? So let's be truthful here, Connor, because you're smiling a little bit.
I'll be honest with you. I thought to myself, well, at this juncture in my life, the most important thing is experience. And I need to figure out a way to get that. And I don't have a lot of money to like go out and get that myself. So if I could get that, bringing value to you guys, that's really served me well, because now I do have that experience. And so I have some confidence when it comes to talking to a distressed seller or, knowing how to slice and dice a house and, turn it from something ugly to beautiful. I know all of the steps involved in doing that. So it was getting that experience that I was really after. And I'm happy to say that I do have that now. It's a type of thing where, and even answering phone calls for you guys, those were more conversations than I could ever have gotten if I had been, trying to start this from the ground up myself. So instantly I was like drinking from a fire hydrant with the volume. And so that on the lead management end of things really like accelerated my progress, I'd say. And then on the project management end of things, 11 projects at a time. There's no way that, somebody who listened to Rich Dad, Poor Dad a year ago would be doing 11 projects, without having some sort of thing like that. Well, there's probably some people who would do that, but sure, I'm just not that. I'm just not that sort of a baller, Yeah,
I put that in the category of your mileage may vary. I'm sure there is some 17-year-old out there that's like 11. That's nothing. I do 80 at a time, and like I started when I was 12, and Connor is geriatric in my world, And I think at 39 we're babies in this thing. Amanda's 37. I'm 39. I think we're babies. And then I met you, and you're like, I'm 23, and I'm like, you could screw up for 15 years and still be still be ahead of me. Like, that's crazy. It's a crazy thought that you could have just been like, I will accomplish nothing for a decade and still be able to start 5 years ahead of us. Like, so to be starting at 23, 24, and then like the world is yours, man. And I think that's kind of an exciting thing to think about. I know it probably feels weird because you're just like, I've been doing this with these guys for 2 years, but like, it's neat to think of what will be for you that we haven't even fathomed yet.
Well, and I think that's the beauty of real estate, right? Just in life in general, time is the enemy. It's working against you. Every day you're getting older, and that like eventually there's an end to that cycle. Yeah. But with real estate, if you buy a piece of property and then, hold it for a while, that's going to work for you. Time's going to appreciate that property. And so it's a weird inversion in that the longer that you do this, the more time you give it to, yield you benefits.
Yeah. So there's going to be kind of your first pro tip from Connor there is that if you're looking to get into real estate and you don't have the money, but you do have the time, go work for somebody. Now, that doesn't mean just go work for your friend or the first investor that you meet. Like, go work for somebody that has an appreciable sized business. Go work for somebody that has a system and has a process and has a team. I don't even know if that's what you did, but like, that is because I would say, I don't even know if we were ready for you yet when we first started this relationship. But like, go work.
I can tell you that you weren't.
Yeah. So another pro tip from Connor: don't go working for Adam and Amanda 18 months ago. But I think it's kind of worked out pretty well.
I think it has.
If you're talking to somebody and they run an appreciable sized business and they're saying, "Hey, we're looking for a lead manager," throw your hat in the ring. Provide value. If you are providing value in the free market, eventually things will work out. And I think that's kind of the thing with you, is that you provided value as a lead manager, but also had a different set of skills that we were able to sit there and go like, okay, you are doing this for us now, but actually we both agree might be a better fit in another part of our business. And that actually was more profitable for you, right? So that's huge. And so if you're talking to somebody and say, hey, I suggest your next steps are read this book or listen to this podcast or check out this material, like go and do that and then report back. And that's the thing that Connor separated himself with, is you were just like, hey, I did those things. And it's like, I've told 100 people. Like, cause I mean, that's kind of the thing, is anytime you're holding a microphone, like all of a sudden, like you become the subject matter expert, whether you deserve it or not. And so people are like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. How do I do what you do? And you're like, I don't know, go listen to this thing or go read this thing. And they're like, cool. And you never hear from them again, or say, follow up with me, call me tomorrow, what, and you just never hear from them again. You're like the one that actually did it. So thank you. And that in and of itself was impressive enough to be like, okay, let's take a risk with this individual. And I think it's worked out really well. So now you started off as a lead manager for us. So you got every phone call. You got the, oh my gosh, it's so great to talk to you phone call. You got the, F you,
take a long
F your
walk
mother,
off a short pier.
Yeah. So you got all that. And some of these people are creatively nasty.
Oh yeah.
So it's, some people are just not nice.
Well, and that's the fun of it, is that person who's like really, out to ruin your day. They were never going to be anybody who's going to generate revenue anyways.
Right. So
enjoy it, have fun with it, and be like, I have my personal like greatest hits of, insults that have been dished my way. And hey, now you've got like another feather in your cap for if you ever need to pull one out, man. You've got some good material.
Well, it becomes a game at a certain point of like, can I take this person from a 10 of anger? Can I bring them down to being a reasonable human being in a minute or 30 seconds? I can get them off the phone. Can I give them what they want, but also make them be like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have yelled at you like that.
Right. That's a cool mini game to play.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, but that in of itself is a sales skill, right? So like just being able to work with people and then being comfortable in that uncomfortability, like that is huge. So I think you hit on something really cool there where you said that drinking from a fire hose, at least when it came to leads, like set you up in an advantage of like knowing what it's like to talk to sellers, knowing what it's like to deal with projects in neighborhoods and valuations and things like that. So you're figuring out all this stuff about the city of Richmond, not because you're talking to one person a week or one person a day, you're talking to dozens of people. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now I've got a good feel for how this conversation should flow. And then at that time you're like, hey, I think you guys are starting to get into flipping. And you need some help in keeping all of that organized. So what do you feel like was the catalyst to moving from lead management to project management, which is essentially all you do full time now?
Yes. Okay. So you're definitely right about the volume piece of things. For anybody who's starting out, that's like the most important thing, is getting as much exposure and experience as like humanly possible. Because that's what's going to allow you to grow. When I went ahead and started lead managing for you guys, we quickly realized that like I could do that. I got pretty good at it, but I didn't love it. And it just wasn't me. And so I started seeing like other aspects of your business. I really tightened up the lead management side of things, because when I came on, there were a lot of things that you and Amanda did that almost seemed like magic. Like how do you get from A to B? There's something in between that's magical here, and taking all of that magic and mechanizing it, putting it into a system, into a process. Someone who paints apartments doesn't realize that maybe that's a skill that they have. So there's a bunch of things about that volume and exposure that are going to identify things within yourself that you didn't really even know about until you get that experience and that volume. So started to realize that, and then looked at project management and be like, well, that entire thing is just a set of systems and processes. Right. Like there's no magic to that at all, even less than the lead management thing. And so started working on a few projects with you guys and doing odd things here or there. Can you coordinate getting this one painted or something like that? And I was like, actually, yeah, I can. I used to paint stuff.
Yeah.
So pieces of that, like you build on what you already know.
Because you knew what a quality paint job looked like. You were able to tell who does good work and who does sloppy work, right? Even outside of painting, you were starting to see like, okay, this guy does trim really well. This guy does, siding really well. Like, because you painted all those things, so you saw what quality work looked like. So you had that advantage.
Exactly. And so that's another tip if people are looking for it. Use what you already know and what your knowledge base already has, and like build on top of that. There's going to be stuff that you don't realize you know. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh, actually, I probably know more about this one thing than most people that you could get off the street do. So use that, build on that. And then I started to, like you said, I started to see and identify like good players, ones who like do a good job. And that's the thing about project management. Everybody will tell you that the house is the easy part. Dealing with the contractors and making sure that piece of things goes smoothly, that's the hard part. Mm-hmm. And anybody who tells you that like project management isn't a sales job, like they're lying. Like, good thing I started out with lead management, because a lot of those skills transferred over to project management. Yeah. Learning how to de-escalate a situation, or learning how to ask the right questions to lead somebody to the conclusion you want. Those are all skills that had a direct transfer over into that. And so where was I going with that? The project management piece of things, I started to like build slowly on top of. And that's the piece that I started to get good at, is figuring out how to deal with the contractors, which ones are going to do good work. And once you figure that piece of things out, everything becomes a little bit more easy, because the right contractor can make or break your experience. The house might still get flipped, but your experience during that process dramatically impacted by the type of people that you have doing the work.
Right. Yeah. And it was, we obviously, Amanda and I come from a wholesaling background. So starting out, that's all we did. And then it was like, well, let's do a flip. And we did a baby flip, right? Where I think it was like, just had to hire someone to paint. Lowe's put in the carpet. I think that was it. Like, it was cleaned. So like, we're like, okay, this is hardly we would even be able to call that a flip. That's really almost more of a wholesale at that point, right? Maybe get a landscaper to do the yard. But so that's literally 3 phone calls and a did they do it, yes or no, right? So Lowe's obviously has, are they the best carpet installers on planet Earth? Probably not. But like, there's the backup of being able to go back to a corporate office and say, I didn't really like that. Can they redo it? I mean, in both cases, the quality of the house and what we were looking for was like, okay, we can do that. So it's like, all right, well, that didn't take enough of, that didn't ruin our day or ruin our week or ruin our month enough to be like, we could never do that again. So we're like, all right, let's get more ambitious. And so it was like, now let's do 1 and then maybe 2. And then it was like, we need help. Because otherwise this becomes a full-time consuming thing. And then other parts of our business, like acquisitions or disposition, starts to fail in the process. We're like, this has real value in being a full-time position that this is all they do for us, right? So you came on board, and I think that's what gave us a lot of the confidence to say, let's do 2, 3, 4 projects. But then we started running into some growing pains there. So what are some of the growing pains? Like, once you hit 2 or 3 projects at a time, like what immediately became obvious to you, whether, good, bad, or ugly, about Adam and Amanda, about working with contractors, like, because I imagine you have a lot of stories here.
Yeah, you teed that up pretty well for me. So I guess the first thing is that throughout that entire time, I was also doing the lead management. Which means as I'm walking a project with a contractor, at any given moment, my phone could ring and I have to drop everything and talk to this person who could be on their way to cursing me out. Mm-hmm. In which case, while you're already busy doing something else, that makes it really easy to rush somebody off the phone.
Sure.
Because you don't feel like you got time for it anyways. It could be the next $30,000 deal. Mm-hmm. And in which case you've got to give it the time it needs. Mm-hmm. Or it could be somebody that, is calling and asking you, hey, can I buy one of your properties or something like that? So there's all these different things that could happen when that phone rings. But what it ends up doing is it ends up splintering your day into a million different slices of time in between each of those phone calls. And it's impossible to get anything appreciable done. So that, I think, was the biggest growing pain for myself, is just realizing that the more the project started to ramp up, the more bandwidth and real estate I needed in my brain to be able to focus on them. Because whether you realize it or not, taking 10, 15 phone calls in a day is going to impact the quality of the work you can get done.
And you don't get to control when it happens, right? So it's
not
just,
at all.
You're like, oh, I'm going to meet this guy at 11:02. We're like, okay, so this is what we think we need to work on. Excuse me, just a second. I need to take the phone call. Like, it just, boom, I'll be back in 5 minutes. And of course, this is going to be the chatty patty that wants to tell you their whole life story. And 23 minutes later, like, I'm so sorry. Give me just another minute. And the contractor's just sitting there going like, is this guy, like, is he taking this seriously? Is he respecting my time? Like, so now it's like where you're in a hybrid role that's kind of just disrespecting your time altogether. Let's be honest. And so that evolved into just like, I gotta get off this phone.
Exactly. So that was the next piece of things that was the growing pain was, okay, now we've got to figure out how to transfer all of this knowledge that I've put in my brain through this volume into somebody else. And that was tough because you don't realize how much you might know that somebody else coming into it fresh doesn't know. So the lead management aspect of things took some time for me to ramp up to. And we, of course, at this point, we're at a breaking point. It's like we needed somebody else a month ago because now things are starting to bubble over and slip through the cracks.
Right.
So a contractor shows up and they might be there to put the floors down, but nobody's painted yet. And so now it's time to put the floors down, and whoever goes in and paints after them is going to get paint all over the floors. Stuff like that. That's easy if you have your brain on top of it. Started to slip through the cracks. Or maybe a lead that could have been one of those $30,000, $40,000 deals ends up slipping through the cracks just because you forgot to call them during the day. So all of this started to happen at that time. And I'm sure you know, it's a big lift to get somebody on board and up to speed.
Yes.
It's a heavy lift at the beginning, and then you get to, once you've given that weight over to them, they can take it and run, and it's a relief. But initially it's hard. So that was the big push, is getting SOPs together, standard operating procedures.
There you go. No such thing as a good acronym.
Yeah. Giving scripts, doing trainings, and a lot of that made me realize how much I'd learned in the past 6 months to a year. And so we did that and tried it with one lead manager. Wasn't really a good fit for a lot of different reasons. Found another one who's excellent. She's with us today, and she's doing great. And so that, in a weird way, that taught me something about hiring people, even in that if you hire the right person, the level of work that you have to put in is less.
Yes.
There's
a good bit of frustration there when we were like, let's hire your replacement for answering the phone. And there was frustration there because it was just not happening.
Yeah.
It was not. And I think we can be safe that this person's probably not a member of our audience, so we won't use a name, but we'll describe essentially how we found them. So this was a VA based out of, was it Egypt? Egypt.
Yeah.
And so we were sold by somebody that, because historically everything we've ever heard about in real estate was you have to have VAs in the Philippines. It was a matter of the most relatable accent, or like they'd all been through, American schools. And so their English was perfect, whatever. But then when we noticed, okay, so somebody said, like, you got to work with folks with Egyptian accents or based out of Egypt, because their accent was more like ambiguous. It wasn't as well known to the American audience. Like, we all know where we've called a a corporate number, and it's very clearly an Indian call center. And this person has no idea how anything works in the United States. And so it leads to frustration because you're just trying to describe something to them and they're just going off of what's on the script. And if it's not on the script, they have no idea how any of it works. And you're just like, hey, I'm trying to get my flight rebooked from this place to this place. And they're like, I have to go down my script because I don't know how to go off book. And then we were like, okay, let's deal with an Egyptian VA, which we were sold that this was going to work really well. But then we realized very quickly that even though they ticked all the boxes for, immaculate as far as English. You would not know that they were not born in the United States from how well they spoke. So you didn't have to worry about that. The accent was almost like ambiguous in the sense of like they could be Latin, they could be they could be from the Northeast. Like you really couldn't quite tell where they were from, so you didn't get that immediate hit of like of a brand hit where all of a sudden you're like, where are you from? Like, but really where it hurt us was we couldn't get them over the hurdle of American turns of phrase.
Yes. So, for example, oftentimes you might be on the phone with somebody and they say, I'm really just on the fence about this. And if you think when they say that they're built, so you're building a fence, stuff like that, where it was a complete miss. And if you have 3 or more of those in a conversation,
right,
that person ends up like really frustrated when they get off the phone.
Yeah.
So the point of that entire role is to make the person feel as comfortable and heard as possible. Right. And so comprehension is huge. And so that in a way taught me a real lesson in that you can't fake local.
Can't fake authenticity.
You can't fake it. Yeah. And so ended up finding somebody else who understands all of that really well. Great with like handling people in general. Mm-hmm. Really good like soft skills, mm-hmm. Interpersonal skills. And so that's been a very easy fit right off the bat. And I'm not going to lie, like part of this is because I already had those scripts and SOPs built by the time the second person came on. Yeah. And so it was a lot easier to hand that off. So there's another lesson. If you do the work right once, you don't have to do it again.
Right.
Especially if the person that you hire is like the right sort of person for that role.
Yeah. So we found someone authentic, someone local to the United States, ironically based out of Kentucky, but Virginia and Kentucky we all have a Target, a Kmart, a Kohl's, and a CVS. Like, so there isn't anything where you're like, we don't have that in Kentucky. Like, no, it's not. She sounds local. She's got a nice Southern accent. She's absolutely adorable. And people relate to her, connect with her, and are like, okay, cool. They're not questioning whether this is a call center in Bangladesh, right? And so she's working with us. That's going really well. Now you're at the point where you don't have to be on the phone. Is your phone ringing at all at this point? I don't think it is.
When my phone rings, it's a project management related call.
Okay.
So I never have to worry anymore that if I don't pick up this phone call because I'm in the middle of, figuring out how a kitchen's going to be laid out, that could have been, $10,000 that I just like let ring off the phone.
Right. Yeah, that's nice. So well, and like for anybody else that's out there, they're like, oh, I'm going to get into this business and I'm going to flip and I'm going to do acquisitions or whatever. We did that ourselves for the longest time. It's not easy. It's not easy. Now it can be done. And I think early on it needs to be done that way. Maybe you're the type of person that has the runway and the funding to be able to just go in and say, okay, I'm just going to fund this business from day one, like a full-fledged business. But essentially all we did was like, okay, let's wholesale till we have enough money to be able to hire for the first role. Let's flip so that we can increase our revenue per deal so that we can, then have the justification for a project manager and a lead manager, and then keep pulling ourselves out of individual roles. So then now we can do things like podcasts and content and other things. Because otherwise I would just be on the phone all day or running around to each project along with Amanda, trying to learn it as we go along ourselves. So naturally we would go together, which meant now 2 people were going to do the same thing because we didn't want one of us to know and the other one not to know, or to be aware of what's going on in a project. And we needed that backup of like, oh my gosh, like, how do we know that you're not being taken advantage of? Just another set of eyes to be like, I don't know about all that. Or do we need to do it that way? Does the contractor really have our best interest in mind here? Sometimes yes. Sometimes they're just trying to do easier work or more profitable work.
I think as a rule, everybody's always going to have their own interests at heart.
Right.
And that, like, whether you're answering phone calls, you need to figure out, what are the best interests that they have that you can solve for, or if it's a contractor, what do they really just not want to do the work? Is there something here that's like preventing them from doing it? Like, how can I be a facilitator? But that's you touched right there on a really important point. I thought, like, the importance of having a separation of powers, and how many times can somebody ask you a question about one of these projects and you just say, I have no idea. Like, that's a Connor question.
Yeah, that's a Connor question.
Right.
It's an Amanda question. And it's particularly funny, like when we are hosting a meetup or something like we did last Saturday. We are in a house that I put under contract. We are in that, and that was where my role ended.
So how many times did you walk into that house?
Once as a first time appointment. I went back to review paperwork with her, and I think we reviewed paperwork, and just by nature, this individual was like a contract redliner, like professionally.
Yeah.
So like she had questions, she had concerns, which we were able to mitigate. I mean, essentially, we don't care what the paperwork looks like on our side, so have at it. As long as everybody shows up to the closing table, we're good. So I think 2 appointments for that. And then I think we talked once over the phone and did a DocuSign, once we kind of buttoned up the paperwork. And then I think I might have gone in it one more time because like we were on the way to something. Amanda and I were already on the way to something.
Yeah, it was that wallpaper discussion.
Yeah. So I didn't, but I wasn't.
You were in the car.
There.
You were a passenger, and she was there, trying out wallpaper.
I was physically there. Let's put it that way.
Right.
I was not a part of any decision making from that point on. So I would say, I was in it twice, and then when it was done, and then I get to walk in and go, "Good job, guys. This looks really nice. Yeah, we do great work."
So
we do great work.
What a great KPI for you.
Yeah,
that is a great number to go by. I've only been in this house 3 times, and like, boom, it's beautiful.
Well, even funnier when a contractor or whatever, for whatever reason, like can't get a hold of one of y'all. And so they'll call me because they're familiar with me or have my number, and they'll be like, "Hey, what'd you want to do with the vanity and this? Did you want to go with the 24 or the 28-inch vanity?" I'm like, "Where?"
Right.
And they're like, this address. And I'm like, Main Street. Where? Like you just like, okay. And then was it Zaina was asking questions the other day when we were at the house, like, what do you do with this? And and I was like, I don't know. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And like, you guys have also done a really good job of keeping me in the dark about expensive things or blood pressure raising things. And so I think probably a doctor or a cardiologist would really be thankful of mine if you're there, like, you're keeping him. I will get to live another 5 years because of the fact that you guys are just keeping me out of the stuff that naturally raises my blood pressure.
Well, and that ability to delegate tasks and then just empower the person to get them done and have it handled is huge. Yeah. Not only because it's, going to make you live 5 years longer, but because that allows you then to really, truly free up yourself for other endeavors. And that's like one of the bigger lessons I've taken away from you guys is the power of delegation and trusting somebody to do their job.
Yeah.
And then I guess kind of if we were going to like shift to like the project management side of things and how that's gone for me, again, it's a volume thing. When you're doing 11 projects at once, you've got to be with it. You've got to have everything together. Otherwise, things are going to spin out of control. Yeah. And so you mentioned, about that phone call where somebody's asking you about stuff and you don't really know the answer. Mm-hmm. when I have 11 projects at once and somebody gives me that phone call and asks me that, I tell them to consult the selection sheet that I sent them 2 months ago because I can't remember the answer. So there's at every step of the way, there's ways of delegating things or just removing it from your brain.
Yeah.
I think of it like, RAM on a computer.
Yeah.
If you've got too many tabs open at once, like that thing's just going to melt.
Yeah.
And you don't want that to happen to your brain.
No.
So,
100%.
like the lesson that I took from you guys is, the importance of being able to delegate stuff. And even if that's delegating it to a spreadsheet to do that work for you, to answer those questions for you, the less questions that you're answering every day, it means the better job you did on the front end of thinking about what could come up and making sure that there's an answer somewhere for somebody to consult. Yeah. Which is huge. So like project management tip, any issue or question that you come across during the job, like you've always got to ask yourself, is this a question that could have been answered at the start of the project, before the project began? Because 9 times out of 10, this question is going to have a dollar figure attached to it. So you can demonstrate in dollars the effects of this question. So, are we going to do granite or quartz on the kitchen countertops?
Yeah. You should be able to know that before you even put it under contract.
That's a budget issue, right?
Yeah.
And like in a weird way, I need to know that so that you can know that, because you're going to be the one negotiating the purchase price, which is where all the money's made anyways.
Right. Exactly. So as you've taken on more projects, you've understood the value of fully figured out scopes of work ahead of time, but also being able to give somebody essentially a spec sheet, or like, hey, this is the type of paint we're going to use. This is the color. This is the type of, these are the color cabinets that we're putting in. And then having a cabinet guy know that weeks in advance of needing all that done. This is the type of flooring we use every time. So now, would you say that for the majority of our projects now, we just have like a thing, like it's just a package, like, almost you would put a name to it, like it's the Connor, like, it's going to be white shaker style cabinets and this particular type of quartz and this style of vanity and like this type of subway tile? Like, is that a thing now? Like, could we brand that? Like, this is like the Connor, like you see people like in new construction be like, this is the Heather plan.
I think to give credit where credit is due, we should call it the Amanda.
Okay.
All right. Because she is still heavily involved in the way that things look. Okay. She's got an eye for it, and she's really good at that. So, let's call it the Amanda.
We'll call it the Amanda. So what would it, like if you were going to do the Amanda to a home, what does that look like?
All right. So good question. You're going to be painting floors for sure. Mm-hmm. Like if you find a project that you don't have to paint or do floors with, it's probably not a good deal. Okay. Yeah. So painting and floors for sure. And then kitchens and bathrooms. Mm-hmm. Okay. And these are what we call heavy cosmetic rehabs that we do. So we're not adding an addition on the house.
Right.
We are not, completely changing the floor plan of a house. When you get into those things, my job gets a lot harder, and the amount of time it takes would steal from other projects. So we've gotten very good at defining what we call the buy box. So what sort of a project we want to do, and even recently we've been refining that some more, which I'm grateful for, by the way. And I think the next thing is like critical systems, making sure all of them are in good shape. Your HVAC, your plumbing, your electrical, your roof. These heavy cosmetic projects, we want a lot of those systems to already be in good shape, or only have to touch one or two of them. So that I think is a good idea for like what the Amanda looks like. And so we've gotten pretty good, and we've gotten into a real rhythm not only internally, but also with our contractors and our vendors that we use. We've done repeat business with them. We are good people to do business with because we get them paid on time. If something comes up, like they can explain it to us and we'll understand instead of flying off the handle at them. But what do you mean that the cabinet broke when you put the countertop on?
Right.
I have a picture of that cabinet. It wasn't like fully supported. So stuff like that. And that means that they're on top of things as well. And you almost there's another real estate investor who talks about training your people. Okay. And even if they don't work for you, you sort of train them into how you work. And so now if there's a question about something, sometimes that even gets answered because of all of the other jobs that you've done with them. So this ecosystem that we've built is really working effectively. And I think that the other thing I'll say about that is if something does go wrong or something happens, the next question you always need to be asking is, okay, was this something that was preventable? Because most things are. Or how are we going to set things up so that this has the least likelihood of happening again? So for anybody who's doing a flip project, whether it's your first flip or your 50th flip, when stuff goes wrong, you always need to be looking at yourself first and wondering, okay, did I just not give them the right instructions? That's another thing, like when working with VAs, they'll always interpret things very literally. So if they do something wrong, it's probably because you didn't tell them how to do it properly to your specifications. So communication's a huge part of this role. I feel like I built a lot of those good skills with the lead management. So this is like, again, I feel like I'm a broken record here repeating myself, but like building on the skills that you gain, and you can always leverage the skills you gained in one thing as you move on to the next.
As we've done these projects, what has been the thing that, like, let's get some examples of things that have just completely caught us off guard. I guess we can start recently with like things like geothermal.
Oh yeah. So I like to say that like people get into real estate for the wealth building aspect of things, but they stay for the stories,
right?
Because the stories are priceless. Yeah. So let me think. So you mentioned geothermal. So there is a geothermal HVAC unit on one of the projects that we just completed. Whenever you get something weird like that, what it means to me is more money.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So specialty septic just means expensive septic.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So whenever you have like a term that you maybe don't hear every day or something like that, it always means, okay, this is going to cost me some more money or some more time or some more headache. So that was interesting.
Because normally we would sit there and say, okay, if we're going to replace this heating, ventilation, and air conditioning unit, that's going to run us about $8,000. It was a bigger house and it was like all one unit. So we're like, okay, maybe this is 10 or 11 or something like that. How hard could it be, right? There's tons of geothermal. You know, if you know HVAC, you know how to do geothermal by default. And it turns out that's not the case, is it? So we have to bring in subject matter expert who says, oh no, you can't just replace this with any unit. Like, there's a process to this, and it would be more expensive to try to retrofit it to a traditional one than it would be to just replace it with the original style of unit. And now good luck finding that. So,
right. And you make a good point here in that it's you've got to like now find the person that has to help you with this special thing. And the thing that cures all of these things is time. If you like figured out ahead of time, okay, this is something weird. And if you've been doing this enough, those things will raise alarm bells for you. So maybe this thing is on back order for, 3 months or something like that. Well, turns out the project takes 3 months to complete. So if you order at the beginning of the project, it's a non-issue. It's a non-event. If you are not as on top of things as you should be, things things like that will crop up and bite you, because now outside of your control, this thing that you didn't know about is going to cost a lot of time. And of course, there's that expression everybody knows, time is money. In real estate, that is literally true.
Yes.
Because every day that you hold the project, you are paying the money on the loan.
Yeah, you've got
that rehab.
You know, private money or hard money costs. So, you know, even if it's your own money, this is opportunity costs. So more often than not, especially if you're doing it at scale, you're using somebody else's money. So that could be anywhere from $25 to $150 a day, depending on how much you're borrowing. So that's a fixed cost right there. So let's just say $50 a day for every day you go over. All right. Well, that's a real thing. You're paying insurance. Then there's the fact that it's just there and in your name. So a liability cost, right? Every day it's empty is another day someone could break in, is another day that somebody could decide, you know, that'd be a nice place to live and squat in. So that's a very real thing that exists. Every day is a day it could burn down. Every day is a day it could do anything, right?
It's a hot potato you want to hold for as little time as possible and then get rid of.
Well, and from my experience, and I think this may have been before you even showed up, but from my experience, the thing that I never really accounted for was seasonality. Mm-hmm. You start in one season of the year, you will end in another, right? To some degree or another. So we started a project in the east end of Henrico, and it was the end of summer. And we said, we need to replace the windows. The GC said, I'll replace them at the end of the project once, you know, the first 25 things are done. And that didn't register as weird in our world. We're like, yeah, I get it. There'll just be a day where the windows will be out of this house. By the end of the project, there was a night, it was 12 degrees outside. And here we were replacing a window. And because we needed to get it done and rushed at the end, all of a sudden it's raining. There's a potential for a snowstorm, but it has to get done in the next 48 hours. So we let them dictate the pace with which everything was done and in the order with which everything was done. Had we just said, hey, we got a good week coming up, no rain, 80-degree weather, type of weather, you wouldn't care whether the AC was on while the guys work in the house. It's not too wet. It's not too dry. Let's just go ahead and replace the windows now. Had we done that, we wouldn't have dealt with anything. So instead, we've got, in order to keep the pipes from freezing in a house, we've got emergency heat and trash bags on the window. Inevitably, there was a delay in the windows being done that day, or they weren't dropped off on time. So that meant it had to stay overnight. It rained overnight at the same time that it, so it's by the time it was all said and done, we probably lost God knows how much in energy costs just because we're trying to keep this thing from freezing. We're putting portable heaters in a house that has half the windows removed, which is not suggested. I think you've even mentioned it. Paint won't dry below a certain temperature.
Just runs right off the wall.
Right. So essentially that became its own issue. So the thing about time is that there's a naivete behind trying to figure out how the project works. You're like, oh yeah, we'll be fine. It's 80 degrees outside right now, and it won't be in 4 months. So as we're getting into winter now, it's now you're dealing with pipes freezing. That you have to worry about that across an entire portfolio now, not just your rentals, but now these houses where you're not running the water every day. You know, nobody's taking a shower and flushing a toilet and warming that water back up. It's you need to keep the power on. You need to keep the water on. You need to do all this stuff. So we've noticed a bunch of that. What other stuff would you say that you've seen where it's just we just completely didn't see that coming?
Yeah, and that's the thing, HGTV will make you think that anybody can flip a house, right?
And they tend to do it in Southern California or in Phoenix.
Yeah. So weather does play a big role. We're still recovering in a way from the COVID pandemic. Mm-hmm. So there's still supply chain issues with certain items. And a lot of the time, if you're with that HVAC unit, if you're replacing for maybe that's on back order. So the thing that solves all of this is just proper planning, attention to detail. I like to say sweat the small stuff, mm-hmm. because the small stuff, if you do it properly means that you don't have to worry about the big stuff. Like that's all taken care of anyways. I'm trying to think of other stories here for you. I mean, like a random dog in the backyard, like whose dog is this? Okay, well, let me call pest control and just be like, hey, can you come get this dog? It ended up being like the next door neighbors who just jumped the fence. But, while animal control is there, they're like, hey, you got a guy asleep on your front porch, right? And I'm like, yeah, I woke that guy up twice earlier today. Is he still asleep? And then like I get a call later in the afternoon. Amanda has just woken him up for the 4th time. So weird stuff like that where you don't really know, like there's going to be a lot of people working on any given project and everybody's going through something. So like, I don't know what he was going through or what was going through his system, but you're going to crop into like personal things like that.
Stolen cars in the backyard.
Stolen cars in the backyard with the keys still in the ignition, just as we're getting photos done, stuff like that you could never account for. And the thing that's going to let you manage that well is if you know that, okay, everything else is buttoned up. This is an issue. My job is to take care of issues and solve problems. That's what your job is. And that it's all par for the course. If somebody does something that messes things up, as inevitably they will do, or it's something random happens that happens like that, always just remind yourself, like, if this person was going to do a better job than this, if they could plan better than this or something like that, then they would be doing your job, So always keeping that in mind, because whenever you're managing projects like this, so much goes wrong anyways. Mm-hmm. And the thing that helps with making sure that your reaction to it doesn't make things go more wrong is just knowing that that's the job. That's what happens. It's always something. Like, we hear that expression, but it's true. Like, it is always something. And your response to that is going to dictate how well everything turns out. And that's the thing I would tell people with the going back to the volume thing. If you've done enough volume, less things surprise you now. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's a random car left in the backyard, and you're like, okay, when can the tow truck driver be there? Yeah, stuff like that. Whereas if you're completely green or unprepared for it, well, that's gonna freak you out or ruin your day. So things that might have ruined my day 6-12 months ago are now just one phone call away from being solved.
Right.
So that's the real value in getting all of that experience is the more experience you have, the less perturbed you'll be when something, inevitably just like goes off the rails.
If I can make a comment on something that I think that you've done particularly well, I would say the same for Amanda, is when you first started and we were like, okay, this is your job, you're going to be managing these projects, you would get a phone call and then you'd be pretty upset. Like, I mean, you weren't crying or anything, but like you'd be visibly frustrated, right? And it was because you have a level of competence that you just expect everyone around you to have as well. I think that's fair. I feel the same way about a lot of things too. And you'd be visibly frustrated. Where I think you've really excelled, and actually something I'm really proud of, is the fact that when you're getting that phone call now, you're not always accepting the problem that's presented to you. So whereas before someone said, hey, Connor, we have a problem, that was like their way of making it your problem and not taking personal responsibility for it. They run into issues. So then now they're passing the hot potato, right? How do I make this Connor's problem so I don't have to deal with it? You've done a particularly good job of when someone calls and says, hey, Connor, I have a problem, of being like, actually, you have a problem.
I appreciate that. And that's a great point. There's a magic phrase here. It's like, how are you going to make this right? Mm-hmm. Or if you're feeling magnanimous, how are we going to make this right? it's always, the conversation always needs to be about the problem and not about assigning blame. You're going to do that on the back end anyways, because you like I said, you're figuring out like, okay, what sentence did I not include that made this go wrong? What did I overlook? Like you're always going to do that yourself anyways, if you're doing a good job.
Right.
But there's a magic in not like assigning blame or criminalizing anybody. Right. And just saying like, it's got to be taken care of. How are we going to take care of it? Being solution oriented. And if you and whoever is calling you with the problem can stand on the same side of things and be like, okay, like, how are we going to fix this? I'm just a facilitator that's asking you questions about the problem. Okay. So let's clearly define what's going on. Okay. Now we know what's going on. What sort of thoughts do you have about the solution? And what that does is it makes them a part of the process, and it also makes them like have some agency and accountability for the way that it turns out. Because now when they implement their solution, if the solution doesn't work, well, that was the solution they came up with, right? You just helped them to get there. Right. So like that way, if it doesn't work the first time, they'll think about like, okay, well, they've got some personal pride and like, okay, how am I going to make this better? And it gives a certain amount of like dignity and power to people. Just like you guys empowered me to have this lead management role, do project management, all of that stuff. Also empowering other people to solve their own problems and like make decisions. They shouldn't ever be afraid of taking action or taking charge or doing something, because you're going to come back and you're going to penalize them for, picking the wrong thing or something like that. Right.
There's no yelling going on in this.
No, that's a great point. Like the more you're yelling, the less is getting done. Right. Right. So every investor that I see that like runs a incredibly successful operation is as cool as a cucumber. Like unshakable, like nothing's going to ruffle them. And that part of that's because they've just gotten so much experience. But part of that is because that is a skill that has given them the ability to react to these problems without making the problem bigger now that they're trying to solve it. So in a nutshell, if you're project managing, you're trying to prevent problems. And then while the project's going on, you're trying to solve them. And like that's it in a nutshell. And the way that you solve the problems is what matters the most. Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that HGTV lied to us about, right? They were like, so you see some shows where there's like a lot of yelling or a lot of animosity, right? It can go that way really easily, but it doesn't have to. Then there's the show where they run into a $20,000 roadblock and they just go, oh, well, that's real estate. And it's like, yeah, we knew that wall was there the whole time. It's like, how did you not poke a hole in it and go, what's up there? Like, or what's in this wall? Or like, there was no inspector. Like, so like they're almost criminally liable in the sense that they are convincing you that this particular project, like that's just how it goes. You just go 20,000 over budget because we missed something. Like a lot of the stuff's pretty obvious. And then they just kind of shrug their shoulders and go, oh no, real estate. And at the end of the episode, they're like, so it turned out okay because we sold it for $90,000 more than we were originally expecting. And you're like, what market are they in? Yeah,
congratulations. The market saved you from your mistakes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it won't always, right? So I'm incredibly proud of the work that you're doing. I am incredibly proud of the growth that you've had because we think you started off as, I would like to get into real estate. Then it was, I'll be a lead manager. You mastered the art of talking to somebody on the phone. You then said, okay, I can also take this skill that I've got from, painting and parlay that into an occasional project or two for you guys, maxing out at 11. I don't think we want to keep that pace.
Please no.
Yeah, I don't want to keep that pace, but it gives us an idea of what you're capable of or what you're capable of teaching others to do. And now especially in this season, we've noticed like things are running really smoothly as a team. I think you work really well with Amanda. She's incredibly complimentary of just what you've been able to do in your own personal growth. I'm proud of the fact that I'm not seeing that same level of frustration anymore. Like, don't get me wrong. We will roll our eyes in this business, right? We're like, so-and-so's at it again. Like there is always, people will always let us down. That's not that will never stop. The problems will always exist, and the problem solving will always exist. But I think you've done a really good job of turning that into something that is professional now. And so we're really happy with that. For those out there that have questions about project management, or are just like, hey, I don't know if somebody would be a good fit for this, and let me have them talk to you. How are they going to be able to get in touch with you? Because I think we've got a pretty sizable group here. So that means a lot of folks are going to be like, I want to chat with Connor. How can they get in touch with you without giving out your phone number on the internet?
I think the easiest way is just like follow me on Facebook and then shoot me a message on like Facebook Messenger or something. And like everybody gets those spam messages, right? Mm-hmm. So like differentiate yourself by being like, hey, I watched that podcast or something like that, got this question. So that I know like, this is an actual person that I need to respond to and not a bot. Mm-hmm. But that would probably be the easiest way.
Okay.
And I've been trying to get better about being more consistent of showing some content of like sweating the small things, the little things on the project that make a big difference.
That's very cool. So Connor is also a part of the Talented Investors That Share Facebook group. I think that's really like as far as how to communicate with us as a team. So myself, Amanda, and really anybody else that we work with. That's another great way to do it so that you're not, blowing up his phone personally. Talented Investors That Share is the Facebook group. That is where you'll get to see more episodes like this. That is where you'll get to see more content put out by us. And eventually Connor will be sharing stuff there too as well. But this is the lifeblood of this business, is working with people. It's identifying talent. Connor is clearly a talent. And he has provided that value, and is the reason why he has gone from lead management to being such a critical part of our business. So if you're looking to see more content like this, Talented Investors That Share on Facebook. This is also available on YouTube as well for the video folks. And thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a great day. Thanks for listening to the Talented Investors That Share podcast. Please share this with other talented investors on YouTube, your favorite streaming platform, and on Facebook at the Talented Investors That Share group. That's the best way to get your questions answered, network with other investors, and just get to know everybody better and learn.
Yeah, guys, for real. This is all he's got. So please do it.
I mean, that may be true, but did you have to put it like that?